All right, everyone, buckle up because today we're diving deep into a story that's, well, it's pretty messed up, but also kind of inspiring. We're talking about those barbed wire traps that people have been finding on bike trails. Yeah, it's scary stuff, but thankfully there's this one inventor who's not just talking about it, he's actually doing something about it. And get this, we have all sorts of crazy stuff to work with for this deep dive. We've got news articles detailing the incidents, obviously, but we also have these pleas for help from fundraisers and even like technical blueprints for this guy's invention. It's wild.
What strikes me is the sheer amount of community response this whole thing has generated. I mean, you've got people actually going out there and removing these traps, risking their own safety. And then you have this inventor just pouring everything he has into this project.
It's like a real-life superhero story, except with way higher stakes. We're talking about a guy who literally tested his invention by riding his motorcycle headfirst into barbed wire at 71 miles per hour. I mean, come on, that's insane. But before we get to all the crazy details, we really need to take a step back and acknowledge how serious the situation is. These aren't just pranks gone wrong. We're talking about attacks that are being classified as hate crimes.
Right. And that hate crime classification is really important because it shows the level of intent. These aren't just random acts of violence. They're specifically designed to target and terrorize cyclists.
Exactly. And the injuries we're seeing are just horrifying. I was reading this one blog post where they were saying that riders are encountering these traps mostly during spring and summer, averaging about one incident per week. That means every week someone is potentially facing a life-altering injury just because they decided to go for a bike ride.
And those injuries are not minor either. We're talking about wires strung at neck height, often doubled up. The blog I read mentioned victims with severed arteries, shredded vocal cords. I mean, it's terrifying to even think about.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff for sure. So let's move on to something a little more hopeful, shall we? Let's talk about the Anti-Trap Trail Cutter Project. The name is pretty self-explanatory.
It really is.
They're trying to distribute wire cutters to parks and trails all over the country so that anyone who comes across one of these traps can disarm it immediately.
Such a simple idea, but so brilliant, right? Like it's a first aid kit for this specific threat. But of course, there are challenges. They actually use the term shrinkage in their campaign literature, meaning cutters that get lost, stolen, or forgotten.
Oh, man, that's frustrating. But I guess it's a reminder that we all need to be more responsible. Anyway, let's shift gears again and talk about the real star of this story, Mr. Peachy and his amazing invention, the neck saver.
Now, this is where things get interesting. Because Peachy isn't some engineer with a fancy degree. He's a craftsman, an artist, a metal worker. He even used to be a garbage man.
Wow, that's quite the resume.
Right. And you can see how all of those experiences have shaped him into the problem solver he is today.
And he didn't just cobble this thing together in his garage either. We've got his technical documents, and they're incredibly detailed. High-strength steel tubing, ooh-inch thick flat bars. It's all very meticulously planned and constructed.
And it's not just about the materials. It's about how he put it all together. Steel is strong, but also relatively lightweight, which is crucial for something that's going to be mounted on a bike.
Right, you wouldn't want to weigh the rider down with something bulky, especially when speed and agility are so important in these situations.
Exactly. And that's why Peachy also included all those adjustable features. Telescoping tubing, slip joint nuts, and washers. He really wanted to make sure this thing would fit any bike.
It's like he thought of everything.
Yeah, he really did. And then there's that infamous motorcycle test at 71 miles per hour. I mean, it sounds crazy, but it also shows just how dedicated he is to making this thing work. He wanted to be absolutely sure that it could save lives.
And that it could save his own life, too.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
So we've talked about how dedicated Peachy is to making this neck saver work, but what I find really interesting is how he's handling the whole money side of things. We found his fundraiser page, and it seems like he's almost uncomfortable with the idea of making a profit from this. He's actually selling these things at cost, barely breaking even.
It's a tricky situation, right? I mean, on one hand, you want to make sure this life-saving technology is available to everyone who needs it. But on the other hand, he's putting in a ton of time and effort and money into this project. It's not sustainable in the long run.
Right. It's like you wouldn't expect a doctor to perform surgery for free.
Exactly. There's a value to his skills and the service he's providing.
So how's he supposed to keep this going if he's not charging enough to cover his expenses?
Well, that's where Jessica Silverman comes in.
Oh, yeah, she's a force of nature.
She really is. Former model, champion sharpshooter, and now she's like the biggest advocate for the neck saver and the anti-trap trail cutter project.
It's amazing how she just stepped up and took charge.
She saw that Peachy needed help, and she didn't hesitate. She created the GoFundMe campaign, wrote those really compelling pleas for donations. She even reached out to Elon Musk trying to get him to invest.
Wow, she's not messing around.
Nope. And it's not just about the money either. She really understands Peachy and his reluctance to ask for help.
Yeah, there's that one story where she described him as the kind of guy who would rather eat oatmeal for 7 months straight than ask for a handout.
Exactly. He's fiercely independent. But Silverman gets that. And she's also trying to show him that it's okay to let people help him.
Because he can't do this alone.
No, he can't.
So let's talk about what he's already accomplished. I mean, the guy's a machine. We found this account of the first 24 hours after he learned about this barbed wire trap problem. And it's insane. He filed for patents, built prototypes, researched grants and loans. He even looked into starting a nonprofit.
Wow. That's incredible.
And he hasn't slowed down since then.
He's really dedicated to this.
Yeah, he's working multiple jobs, raising a kid, and still managing to pump out these neck savers and get those wire cutters to the parks.
It makes you wonder how he does it all.
Right. And his goals are pretty ambitious. He wants to have over 100 neck sabers in use and 300 parks equipped with cutters by the end of the year.
That's a lot to take on,
Yeah.
especially for one person.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if it's sustainable. But at least he has Silverman there to help him.
Yeah, she's been amazing at raising awareness, getting the media involved.
Oh, yeah, we saw that news story where the reporter was calling the people setting these traps monsters. They even showed a picture of these hikers who tried to remove a trap with their bare hands, and their hands were all cut up.
Ouch. Yeah, that's a powerful image. It shows just how dangerous these traps can be, even for people who are just trying to help.
Right, and it also shows why it's so important to have those wire cutters readily available.
Absolutely. It's not just about protecting ourselves. It's about being able to help others who might be in danger.
It's about taking back those spaces and making them safe for everyone.
Exactly.
And that's what I find so inspiring about Peachy and Silverman. They're not letting fear win.
They're fighting back with compassion and ingenuity.
They're showing us that we don't have to be victims.
We can make a difference.
And that brings us to a really important question. How do we as individuals contribute to a solution? How do we ensure that our trails and parks remain safe for everyone?
It's a question that we're going to explore in more detail in the final part of this deep dive. Stay tuned.
So we've talked about the problem, we've seen the dangers, and we've met the people trying to make a difference. But now comes the tough part. What can we actually do about it?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like our actions don't really matter.
Especially when you're up against something as scary as this.
But the truth is, even small actions can have a big impact. Just by being aware of this issue, you're already doing something.
Right.
Talk to your friends, share the story online, engage in those discussions about trail safety. All of that helps to raise awareness and encourage others to take action.
It's about spreading the word, basically.
Exactly.
And of course, there's always the option of donating to the GoFundMe.
Yeah, every dollar helps get more neck savers out there and more wire cutters into those parks.
It's a direct way to support Peachy and Silverman's efforts.
But beyond donating, there's also the power of community involvement.
What do you mean?
Well, imagine if we all took some time to volunteer. Maybe organize trail cleanups, or even just keep an eye out for anything suspicious while we're out hiking or biking.
Just being more vigilant.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming those spaces and looking out for one another.
And speaking of looking out for one another, I found this really cool detail in one of Peachy's documents. He is actually accepting donations of new or used wire cutters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he said even if they're a little rusty, he'll make sure they get to the parks that need them.
I love that. It's such a practical and impactful way to contribute.
Right. It's like everyone can do something, even if it's just digging out an old pair of cutters from their garage.
You never know, those old cutters could end up saving someone's life.
Seriously. It's a small act with potentially huge consequences. And it really gets to the heart of what this story is all about. Taking a stand against something terrible and choosing to build a safer world.
That's what makes this whole deep dive so compelling. It's not just about the dangers, it's about the resilience of the human spirit.
It's about people like Peachy and Silverman who refuse to let fear win.
They're fighting back with compassion and
And
ingenuity.
they're inspiring others to do the same.
But it also brings us back to that question we posed earlier. How do we balance the need to protect ourselves with the desire to trust and enjoy the outdoors?
It's a tough one.
It is. But I think what this deep dive has shown us is that It's not an either-or situation.
We don't have to choose between fear and freedom.
Exactly. We can be cautious and aware without letting fear control us.
We can still enjoy those amazing outdoor spaces.
It's about finding that balance, taking those responsible steps to ensure our safety, but also holding on to that sense of community and shared responsibility.
Because at the end of the day, there are more good people out there than bad.
Absolutely. There might be individuals who choose to harm, but there are countless others who choose kindness, who choose to build, who choose to protect.
Let's choose to be a part of that positive force.
I'm with you on that.
This deep dive has been a wild ride. We've seen the dark side of humanity, but we've also seen incredible acts of courage and compassion.
It's been inspiring.
As we head back out into the world, let's carry these stories with us. Let's stay engaged, stay aware, and most importantly, stay connected.
And remember, those trails are out there waiting for us. Let's explore them safely, responsibly, and with a renewed sense of hope.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Be sure to tune in next time for another deep dive into the fascinating world around us. Until then, stay curious.